he took the path of the woods, that means forest, for several miles. Then he crossed a wide flat of niggerheads and dropped down a bank to the frozen bed of a small stream. Then he reached to a bank, and there he saw that the stream had also frozen, the water of that stream. He crossed that bank also, and this was Henderson Creek. He knew that now he was 10 miles away from the fox. Then he looked at his watch, it was around 10 o'clock. That in an hour he was traveling 4 miles. So he calculated, and he found that by 12:30 he would reach at the fox. So he decided to celebrate and have a lunch over there. The dog dropped in again at his heels with a tail drooping discouragement as the man swung along the creek bed. The furrows of the old sled trail was plainly visible, but a dozen inches of snow covered the marks of the last runners. In a month, no man had come up or down that silent creek. The man held steadily on. Now the dog was quite discouraged when he was walking with this man, and he saw that this man is flinging himself over the snow only, the snow bed. And there he could see the marks of the sled that some people had traveled through. For a month or two, nobody had crossed this trail because it was very, very cold. The man sat there. He was not much given to thinking, and just and particularly he had nothing to think about save that he would eat lunch at the fox, and that at 6 o'clock he would be in camp with the boys. He did not think about anything. He just only had a determination that I would have my lunch at the fox, and at 6 o'clock I would reach there at the camp. There was nobody to talk to, and had there been, speech would have been impossible because of the ice muzzle on his mouth. Now nobody was with him with whom he could have a conversation, and even if he would try to converse, he could not speak because all his mouth was covered with snow and was jammed. So he continued monotonously to chew tobacco and to increase the length of his ember bed. So what he did was he continued chewing the tobacco and spitting out the juice of that tobacco, and that would cover the bed again with that amber color. Once in a while he thought reiterated itself that it was very cold and that he had never experienced such cold. Then he thought to himself that he had never felt such a cold because this was the severest cold that he had ever felt. As he walked along, he rubbed his cheekbones and nose with the back of his mittened hand. Now he walked along, he rubbed his cheekbones with the help of his mittened hand, and he did this automatically now, and again changing hands. But rub as he would, the instant he stopped, his cheekbones went numb, and the following instant the end of his nose went numb. Now as he was doing this continuously, automatically, with either of his hands, later on when he tried to realize, he realized that all his cheeks had also gone numb, even the nose was numb. He was sure to frost his cheeks. He knew that and experienced a pang of regret that he had not devised a nose strap of the sort, but bore in cold snap. Such a strap passed across the cheeks as well and saved them. But it didn't matter much after. He repented or regretted that he had not used a nose strap. That nose strap would go through the cheeks also and save them also. But he had not used that. But it didn't matter much after all. What were frosted cheeks? A bit painful, that was all. They were never serious. So then he thought to himself, what is frosted cheeks? It will be a little painful, and after that it's nothing like to be serious. Empty as a man's mind was of thoughts, he was keenly observant, and he noticed the changes in the creek, the curves and bends and timber jams, and always he sharply noted where he placed his foot. Once coming around a bend, he shied abruptly like a startled horse, curved away from the place where he had been walking, and retreated several places back along the trail. Now, as we know that the man was devoid of thinking, he never thought of anything else. So he just was observing what is happening all around. He noticed that the creek had many changes in it. The curves, the bends, and the timber jams, all these were quite different this time. So he had to place his feet very carefully on all the curves and all the bends. Now once when he came around a bend, immediately he curved back like a horse, a startled horse, and then curved away from the place where he had started walking. Again he took careful steps around the bends. The creek he knew was frozen clear to the bottom. No creek could contain water in that Arctic winter. But he knew also that there were springs that bubbled out from the hillsides and ran along under the snow and on the top of the house. So he saw that the creek was frozen, and it was frozen till the bottom, till the depth. And he knew that no creek could contain water. But he knew that there were springs that bubbled out from the hillsides. He knew that there were some water springs that used to bubble out from the hillsides and ran along the snow and on the top the ice of the creek. And these springs, the water from these springs, when it used to go through the snow regions, it used to again freeze to ice. He knew that the coldest snaps never froze these springs, and he knew likewise the danger. He knew even if the coldest atmosphere would be there, the water of those springs will never get frosted. And he also knew the dangers of these springs. They were traps. They hid pools of water under the snow that might be 3 inches deep or 3 feet. Sometimes a skin of ice half an inch thick covered them, and in turn was covered by the snow. Now this was actually a trap. If you went to such springs, it contained a huge supply of water under the ice, 3 feet below the ice or 3 inches deep, or there could be a skin of ice around such this thick covered over them, and in turn go directly deep into that water below the ice. Sometimes there were alternate layers of water and ice skin, so that when one broke through, he kept on breaking through for a while, sometimes wetting himself to the waist. Then sometimes what would happen, that there were alternate layers of water and ice, water and ice, water and ice. So if anybody would go deep inside that below the snow, then he would get himself wetted completely till the waist. That was why he had shied in such panic. He had felt the give under his feet and heard the crackle of a snow-hidden ice skin. That is why he moved back when he had moved towards one of the bends, because he felt that the ice below his feet had crackled. It had given a creak sound, which meant that it was trying to break and put him inside deep into that snow. And to get his feet wet in such a temperature meant trouble and danger. And he knew if his feet would go deep into that water in such an atmosphere, it would be dangerous for him. At the very least, it meant delay, for he would be forced to stop and build a fire, and under his protection to bare his feet while he dried his socks and moccasins. He stood and studied the creek bed and its banks and decided that the flow of water came from the right. So for he would be forced to stop and build a fire, and it would make him delay because then he would have to build a fire, stop there, dry his socks, his moccasins, his mittens and all. So he stood and studied the creek bed, that from where can he go easily, and he decided that the flow of the water came from the right and he has to be very careful while passing through it. He reflected a while, rubbing his nose and cheeks, then skirted to the left, stepping gingerly and testing the footing for each step. Once clear of the danger, he took a fresh chew of tobacco and swung along at his 4-mile gait. So after looking at the flow of the water from the right, he decided to move towards the left. There also he kept his foot very carefully so that his feet might not go inside deep below the ice to get himself wet. So once he was clear out of the danger, he would chew fresh tobacco, and he then moved over the 4-mile gate. In the course of the next 2 hours, he came upon several similar traps. Usually the snow above the hidden pools had a sunken, candied appearance that advertised the danger. Now, while in the 2 hours' time he found that there were several dangers in his way where he could have gone deep below the ice, because these hidden pools had a sunken and candid appearance. It was quite clear from looking at the ice that there is a hidden pool beneath. Once again, however, he had a close call, and once suspecting danger, he compelled the dog to go on in front. Once again, he found that there is a danger in front, so he forced the dog to go in front of him. The dog did not want to go. It hung back until the man shoved it forward, and then it went quickly across the white, unbroken surface. While the dog knew that there was a danger ahead, so the dog did not want to go ahead, but the man forcefully pushed him ahead to go through that unbroken surface. So the dog went quickly across the white, unbroken surface. Suddenly it broke through, floundered to one side and got away to the firmer footing. Suddenly in one of these surfaces, the dog broke through and he went inside the ice. And then moving from one side, he went to the other side. It had wet its 4 feet and legs, and almost immediately the water that clung to it turned to ice. The dog's 4 feet and legs had become wet, and immediately the water that was clung to those feet parts had turned into ice. It made quick efforts to lick the ice off its legs, then dropped down in the snow and began to bite out the ice that had formed between the toes. Now the dog, being an animal, wanted to protect itself. So the dog, he sat down, he tried to bite the ice that had frozen on his feet and legs, and sat down to remove all that ice. This was a matter of instinct. To permit the ice to remain would mean sore feet. It did not know this. Now this was only an instinct of the dog to remove that ice. But if the dog had not bitten away the ice from his feet, it would meant sore feet. He would not be able to move further. It merely obeyed the mysterious prompting that arose from the deep crypts of its being. But the man knew, having achieved a judgment on the subject, and he removed the mitten from his right hand and helped to tear out the ice particles. He did not expose his fingers more than a minute, and was astonished at the swift numbness that smote them. It certainly was cold. He pulled on the mitten hastily and beat the hand savagely across his chest. The man tried to help the dog, so he removed the mitten from his right hand and tried to help the dog to remove the ice from there. But he was surprised that even not for a minute his hands were open in the air and it started becoming numb and very much cold. So he immediately put his mitten hastily and he tried to rub it against his chest. At 12 o'clock, the day was at its brightest, yet the sun was too far south on its winter journey to clear the horizon. The bulge of earth intervened between 12 o'clock. The day was quite bright, but there was no sun at all. And the bulge of earth intervened between it and Henderson Creek. Now here the earth was swelling up because of the snow, where the man walked under a clear sky at noon and cast no shadow. So he was moving in that Henderson Creek, but there was no shadow of the man on the snow because of the absence of sun. At 12:12 he arrived at the forks of the creek. So at 12:30 he reached to the forks of the creek. He was pleased at the speed he had made. If he kept it up, he would. So when he reached the forks of the creek, he was pleased that I have maintained my speed. And if he would maintain this speed, then certainly he would be with the boys by 6 p.m. in the evening. He unbuttoned his jacket and shirt and drew forth his lunch. The action consumed no more than a quarter of a minute, yet in that brief moment the numbness laid hold of the exposed fingers. He unbuttoned his jacket, his shirt, and took out the packet of the lunch. And even it was less than a minute, his fingers again became numb. He did not put the mitten on, but instead struck the fingers a dozen sharp smashes against his leg. Then he sat down on a snow-covered log to eat. He did not put on the mitten because he had to have his lunch. So he did what? He just struck the fingers towards his legs like this. And then he started having his lunch by sitting on the snow-covered log of wood. So we have completed till here only. More. Till then, keep on studying this. Thank you.